All right, good morning, everyone. We'll try it again. Good morning, everyone. Who here has been at West Oak Lane before? Okay, amazing. Everyone, okay. Well, thank y'all for having us. My name is Wynn, and I come from Atlanta to help co-host this event.
Good morning, everyone. And my name is Ala Banjo, and I came from D.C. to help co-host this event.
Lovely. And we'll get some of the housekeeping out of the way first. Most people, when you walked in, you got a white survey, and you used it as your breakfast ticket. Did anyone not get a chance to fill out this survey? If you didn't, please just raise your hand and we can bring one to you. It's really helpful for us to understand just how helpful this event was. So I see the gentleman in the back, I think Mr. Willis, needs a form, so we'll make sure to bring you one. Anyone else still need a form? It helps us understand just how helpful this event was. So awesome. So a couple of forms. Can someone, Romario, do you mind running the forms? Just keep your hands up for me, and he just needs a form. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to ask for a little audience engagement here. Who in the room has heard of NOWINCLUDED? NOWINCLUDED. Sound familiar? Ring a bell at all? Okay, that's okay. So we're here to tell you a little bit more about both NOWINCLUDED. Who has heard about MMRF, or the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation? Okay, we got a couple more hands. So NOWINCLUDED is an online and in-person community for all things Black health. It's actually a Black-owned company that was founded to make sure that the Black community is represented in spaces like clinical research, but to also just generally make sure that the community has the health information and resources that are necessary. And we don't like to just do kind of traditional health education. We like getting creative and building community and hosting events like this. So by y'all being in this room today, y'all are essentially part of the NOWINCLUDED community. The idea is that historically, the Black community has either not been included at all or included in the wrong ways. So NOWINCLUDED is a space to make sure that the community has the resources that are needed. And I'll let Ala explain a little bit about the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation.
Okay, thank you, Wynn. So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at the Multiple Myeloma Community Summit. It's definitely a pleasure and an honor to have you in the room. We know that you could have spent your morning anywhere else, but you chose to be with us, so thank you. My name is Ala Banjo, and I'm here from the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation, and we are a patient-founded organization dedicated to finding a cure for multiple myeloma for each and every patient. And part of what we do is empower patients and the myeloma community through education and resources. Now, we know that not necessarily everyone in the room has heard about multiple myeloma, but we seek to change that. So we are here to give you just very simple information about multiple myeloma, how you can better manage your health, how you can access resources. And it is our hope that you not only walk away learning much more about multiple myeloma than you did walking in, but also able to take this information back home, speak to your friends and your loved ones about what you heard, and also apply it to other areas of your life. So, you know, listen, ask questions. This is an open and a safe space. No question is off limits. We've got nurse navigators in the room. We've got, you know, just wonderful resources here for you. So if you have any questions, we've got vendors as well downstairs. But we would really like it to be a very interactive session, and we look forward to spending the day with you. And again, thank you for coming.
Yes, and interactive, okay? So let's kick off. Who has heard of multiple myeloma before? Raise your hand. Okay. And let's just make sure, who has heard of melanoma before? Okay, so remember, there are two different things, okay? A lot of folks thought when we were talking about myeloma that we were talking about melanoma, but they're two different conditions. Melanoma is focused on skin cancer, and today we're here to focus on multiple myeloma, which is a blood cancer, and our panelists will tell you a lot more about it. Just so that you get a sense of the flow, hopefully everyone had breakfast. Who enjoyed their breakfast? Okay, breakfast was good. Thank you to Kashara. You'll see her towards the end. She's the mastermind behind all of this, but she made sure we had breakfast. We're also having lunch, so make sure y'all stay for lunch. And in between, we have different interactive sessions where you'll see panelists who are both patients, people who we call multiple myeloma thrivers, as well as professionals in the space that help care for the folks and their caregivers with multiple myeloma. So you'll see that throughout the day, and we're just really excited to interact with you all, and hopefully by the end of the day, everyone will have their hands raised when we ask if you've heard about multiple myeloma. We'll also make sure you have breaks, okay? We know everyone doesn't want to be talked at all day, so there will be 10 to 15-minute breaks where you'll get a chance to go downstairs and see all the awesome vendors that we have here as well. So with that, I'll have Ala kick off our very first panel.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Wynn. And so we're going to jump right in with our first set of panelists. So I'd like to introduce Paul Verwey. And Paul is a husband, a father of four boys, and a new granddad. He was diagnosed in 2023, and although he's not in remission, he is taking on the fight with multiple myeloma and is back to being a full participant in his life. And next, I'd like to introduce Ms. Patricia Savage. So Ms. Savage is a self-proclaimed fighter. Now, this is a theme you'll hear throughout the day with all of our myeloma thrivers. And she was diagnosed in 2022. She is a patient of Dr. Binder's and credits her incredible team with getting her back on her feet. And now Dr. Adam Binder, who is our myeloma specialist, and he is a hematologist-oncologist at the Sidney Kimmel Comprehensive Cancer Center at Thomas Jefferson University. And he runs the plasma cell disorder and multiple myeloma program. And he's the principal investigator for many of the multiple myeloma clinical trials at Jefferson and is interested in improving the patient experience. So please give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you. Now, Ms. Savage, I'm going to have you join your partners in crime over here. No, it's okay. Over here? Over here, thank you. And Mr. Verwey, do you have a mic? No? Is it? We can share. Okay. All right. Perfect. Yeah, we'll share. All right. So we're going to jump right in. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for taking the time to share your story. And, you know, one of the questions that Wynn asked right off the bat was, who has heard of multiple myeloma? And we saw a few hands go up. So let's start with the basics, right? So Dr. Binder, now we know that you see patients all the time. If someone walks into your office and has never heard of multiple myeloma before, and they have no medical background, how would you explain in the simplest of terms what is multiple myeloma?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me here today. Appreciate it. I always say that multiple myeloma is a blood cancer. A lot of people actually think of it sometimes being a bone cancer because it affects our bones a lot, but it really comes from the blood. Our bones are hard on the outside and soft and fatty on the inside, and that soft and fatty inside part is the bone marrow. You know, if you've ever broken open a chicken bone, it's kind of dark and soft in the middle. That's the bone marrow. That's where all the blood comes from. And multiple myeloma comes from there. In our blood, we have three major types of blood cells. We have the white blood cells that fight infection, red blood cells that carry oxygen, and platelets, which when we cut ourselves, the platelets act as a plug. And multiple myeloma comes from something called the plasma cell, which is a type of white blood cell, an infection-fighting cell. And these plasma cells live in the bone marrow, in the center of our bones, and normally they're sleeping, and when we get sick, they wake up to fight infection. But sometimes changes occur where the plasma cells aren't sleeping, but something flips the switch in them, and they just wake up and are awake all day long, 24/7, and they start growing and dividing uncontrollably, and that's when it becomes a cancer called multiple myeloma. Myeloma affects our bodies in a couple of major ways related to its growth inside the bone marrow. So as it grows and fills up that space, it interferes with the other blood cells' ability to grow. And so people can become very anemic because it doesn't allow the red blood cells to grow. Sometimes also as it grows in the center of the bone, it can expand and actually start to eat away at the hard part of the bone. And our bones are full of calcium, and so as it thins out the bones, it releases all that calcium. And people can present with very high calcium levels. You can also develop weak bones, and your bones can be at risk for fractures or breaks. And the last thing that can happen is that these plasma cells, when they fight infection, they make antibodies. We have antibodies that help protect us from infection, and these plasma cells make too many antibodies, and these antibodies can sometimes clog up the kidneys, causing kidney failure and kidney problems. And these are the main ways that myeloma affects our body. And sometimes people call them the crab symptoms. C for high calcium, R for renal failure or kidney injury, A for anemia or low blood levels, and B for bone lesions.
No, that's a great rundown, Dr. Bender. Thank you. So I always say something, when you hear the word, multiple myeloma, it sounds complicated, but, Dr. Bender just did a great job of breaking it down when he mentioned those crab symptoms. So I think that's a very, easy way to remember what those symptoms are, and then also just a good prompt to continue to ask questions. So now I'm going to move it over to Ms. Pat, who, now that we know what those symptoms look like, what we also want to know is just what the journey for a patient looks like as well. And knowing that Dr. Bender is your physician, so tell us about your path to diagnosis. How did you find Dr. Bender, and just what is your relationship like?
Okay, good. Hello, everyone. I found Dr. Bender by going to my regular appointments and my primary care doctor, doing a regular blood work and stuff. And one day she called me. She said, "Miss Savage, I want you to come in and take another test." So I went in, took the test, and think nothing of it. And I remember I was home eating breakfast, and she called me, and that's when she told me what she thought it was, but she wanted me to go see an oncology doctor, which was Dr. Bender, the best in the house. And it kind of, I ain't gonna say I was like upset, but I just said, no, I don't have no cancer, because I worked at Jefferson for 40 years and worked on the bone marrow unit that I was a patient on. So I went to meet Dr. Bender and he told me everything he wanted to do. So I said, let's do it, because I'm determined what was going on with me. I'm going to fight it. I want to be here for my family. So I did. I'm glad that was the best thing I ever done was to do that. And like I said, we here for us, patient-doctor relationship, and the thing that he asked me to do for us concerning my health, him and his team is the best. And we did that. He got me in remission. So then he said the next step is a transplant. And I'm like, wait a minute now, I work up on the floor, so what are you talking about, But he had to explain it to me because I just wasn't going to just accept that, I had to know what it was. Even though I worked there and worked on that unit, I didn't know what it was. I was just, but once he explained it to me, I did it, and I'm glad I did because look at me now. Yeah. I'm on this journey. I'm on this journey, and I thank my heavenly God, and I thank my doctor and his team. They did, and they still doing things for me. So I would say, if I could say anything, keep your appointments #1, because you might think something simple is just a little ache and pain, but what we got, it can affect you any kind of way. A little ache here, ain't nothing to it. A little hurt in my back, ain't nothing to it. But then it could be really something. So I would say, keep your appointments and just do what you got to do and go to the doctors.
No, thank you, Ms. Pat.
You're welcome.
I mean, that's a very, powerful statement because we know that, multiple myeloma disproportionately affects the Black community. And, even just hearing, we hear so many horror stories about how, patients are diagnosed, but even just you saying, in your regular appointment, that yearly physical, so that really speaks to the importance of having those appointments and maintaining that open communication with your team. And I'm glad that you found Dr. Bender because the trust was obviously there, because as soon as they called you, and something else that you said that made me smile is, you said you worked on that bone marrow one, and you know what goes on there, and still you didn't. You said, not me, well.
They took good care of me. They treated me like a queen, so I was happy.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So I think that speaks to the fact that, no matter how much we know, it's, just really putting on a different hat and, taking the advice of our team. So, Mr. Paul, I'm going to hand it over to you now, and I would love for you to tell us about your journey and how you also came in touch with Dr. Bender.
Yeah, my path to diagnosis was a little bit rougher than Pat's. So I consider myself a DIYer. Do a lot of my home stuff at home myself, cabinets, floors. And last year, well, I guess the year prior, I decided to build a gym for my wife. And that included moving a lot of heavy equipment around. And so my back started to hurt. This is around Thanksgiving. Being a tough guy that I was like, I'm just going to take some Advil, some Aleve. Don't need to see a doctor. It's fine. It's just my back. I always have back problems. It lingered for a while. Finally, I decided to go see a doctor, an orthopedic doctor, who gave me a steroid pack. My back started to feel a little bit better. Didn't last long, though. Come January, my back was hurting even more. I went to go finally see a specialist who found compression fractures in my spine. While I was waiting for my insurance company to give a prior authorization for a CT scan in February, I was using this same cane to help me get around because of my back pain. I switched hands from my right to my left, put the cane on the ground, and my left arm snapped right by the shoulder. To make a long story short, by the time I was finally admitted to Jefferson, I had a broken left arm, compression fractures in my spine. I also had lesions that had eaten away part of my hip and a fracture in my left femur. So I was completely non-weight-bearing, bedridden in the hospital for several months. It was not the best time of my life, but thanks to Dr. Bender and his team, I've been through several series of different treatments. I haven't reached remission yet, but as you can see, I'm up, moving around. I'm no longer non-weight-bearing. I was in a wheelchair for months. I parked that wheelchair in my garage for the last time the other day, so I don't plan on getting back into it again. Just keep fighting and pushing forward.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing your story. And, we can see two completely different, perspectives when it came to the path to diagnosis. But I think, one of the key takeaways is, you found the right team and you're both here, right? You're able to regain part of your life. I mean, you're able to regain your life and you're able to move around and be mobile and really, just kind of keep moving forward with things. So, we're very thankful again to you for joining us. And, again, we can't overemphasize how important it is to, take those symptoms into consideration.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And if I can interject again,
Please.
one of the common themes is, going to see your doctor regularly and talking to your medical team about symptoms that you're having and not ignoring them. Had I not been, so boneheaded and waited so long, I may not have dealt with a broken arm, or the symptoms have gotten as bad as they were. But, I just thought I was going to be a tough guy and just, live through it. And there were other plans.
Yes, and also, don't be afraid to talk to your family members or your spouse or whoever. Just let them know what you're going through. And like you said, attend all your doctor visits. And it's, like I said, please, if you think it's nothing to it, still, you're not the doctor. Ask your doctor or somebody in that field. And you never know what come out of it.
So, Dr. Bender, I'm going to hand it over to you now. We've talked a lot about how Pat and Paul were connected to you. So how can patients build the right team? So even if they can't travel to a place like Jefferson, easily, but how can patients be sure to get the best care from their HEMONC in their community?
Sure. So first, I just want to thank you both for sharing your stories. I know sometimes it's not easy to talk about these things, so appreciate it. Yeah, I think finding the right team is all about finding the right people for you. There's a lot of people that go into the team when you're getting treatment for cancer. There's your loved ones who are going to be by your side at home and with you, helping you out when maybe you're having symptoms, outside of the office. There's the doctor who's going to be there meeting with you, talking to you about your treatments. But then there's also everybody the doctor works with who's just as important, if not more important than the doctor, in terms of the nursing staff, the nurse practitioners, the front desk, the MAs. They're all part of your team, and are really important because they kind of complete the care team for you. There's some things that people like to talk to the doctor about. There's some things people like to talk to the nurse about, and each of us are really key and important. We talk about sometimes this right track here, seeing the right team, having the right tests, and getting the right treatment for you as an individual. And I think making that team is key. And that team, can also sometimes be a collaboration between doctors, between cancer centers. It's not always that you live near, a major academic medical center that has people who just focus on multiple myeloma. It may be easier and more convenient to see an oncologist closer to home that sees lots of different types of cancers, and that's okay. And sometimes they can collaborate with multiple myeloma specialists at these large academic centers. Now with video visits and telehealth, it's much easier to have access. You don't have to travel hours to get to a place to see people to understand their expertise and their care. With Paul and I, we actually collaborate with other physicians at other institutions to try and create a complete team so that we're making sure he gets the best treatment, the best tests, and the best care at the right time. And so it's really important that we all work together as a community for the person because it's not about just taking care of you at one place. It's about doing what's best for the individual.
No, thank you. And even as we talk about the right track with the team and the right tests and the right treatment, something that we see commonly in multiple myeloma is the presence of clinical trials. And Wynn mentioned earlier how NOWINCLUDED plays a role in educating folks about clinical trials, and that's what we do at the MMRF as well. Really, educating folks about clinical trials, making sure that they understand that it is part of their care. And I would love to hear from, I'll start with Pat, and then Paul also, I'll bounce it over to you, just how your journey, your treatment journey has included participation in clinical trial. So take us a little deeper though. What was going through your mind when you heard about clinical trial, and what kind of questions did you have?
Well, when it was brought to my attention.
Is there green light there?
It's on.
Okay. Okay. Well, when it was brought to my attention about my doctor being there, I had questions. Of course, I talked to my family, and I asked, what would it do for me first, my outcome, the treatment that I was already on, was working. So, we had to talk about it and stuff. I said, you know what? I'm going to do it because I want to be here for my family, and if that's what I have to do, I'm going to do it. So, I did, and so far, I haven't had nothing really, I haven't had nothing. I've been taking the medicine like I'm supposed to. I go to the doctor. I get it when I'm supposed to get it, and so far, it's been working. I had a PET scan, I think last month, because I've been a year out of my transplant, and they seen on the PET no notice of the disease for right now. So I'm thankful. As far as I'm concerned, I would recommend it, the clinical trial. I really would, because it's helping me, and it's still helping me, and I know I'm still on the journey. So yes, I would recommend it highly. I would.
Thank you, Pat. So Paul, I'll let you chime in on your experience with clinical trials as well.
So I was involved with one clinical trial that Dr. Bender recommended me for. It had a very specific purpose in my treatment plan without getting too deep into it. We had a long-term goal and a short-term goal. With any treatment plan, there is not a one-size-fits-all. You try something out. If it doesn't work well, you move on to the next one, and you move on to the next one. And there's plenty of other things that you can try. So for me, it was very important to make sure that I didn't think of this as like, okay, clinical trial, silver bullet, I'm going in, I'm going to be cured, because that's just not the case. It didn't work long term for me, but that's not the case for everybody, and I'm hopeful to get involved with another clinical trial. It did do its job for what we wanted it to do in my treatment plan, that short-term goal. But clinical trials are a great idea if you can discuss them with your oncology team and make that and it's that right decision for the for your particular cancer and how it's presenting, and you know, it's something really good to get involved with.
Great. So, no, thank you both for your responses. So something that I'm hearing is that, number one, there was discussion, right? So whether it was with Dr. Bender, the care team, or even your family members, there was discussion going into the decision to take part in a clinical trial. And then when you arrived at that, the other thing that I'm hearing is it was part of your care. So it's, Paul, you said it's not a silver bullet. It works for some, it doesn't work for others. But at the end of the day, it is part of the care continuum, and the goal is to get you better. Mm-hmm. So I think those are very important takeaways from just even the statements that you've made. And now, Dr. Bender, I actually want to ask you, now we've heard from Paul and Pat about how they were approached, you know, with the idea of participating in a clinical trial. And something that we really, you know, work hard on, you know, at the MMRF is just even getting care teams to approach patients with the idea of clinical trials and not letting any kind of preconceived notions stop them from having that conversation with patients. So can you just tell us how you approach conversations around clinical trials with your patients, and just even the importance of raising awareness and destigmatizing clinical trials to make sure that we have good representation?
Yeah. So I try to talk about clinical trials kind of throughout my visits with patients and individuals. If we have a trial at Jefferson, or if there's a trial at Penn or Fox Chase that I'm aware of that I think is going to be good for somebody I'm seeing, I try to talk to them about it early. I introduce the idea, you know, maybe a couple of visits before I think somebody's going to need to actually make a decision about going on a clinical trial. It's a lot to consider, it's a lot to think about, and it's a lot to process. And so, you know, it's something that I think, you know, takes time and planning as we talk about it. You know, one of the things I think about and talk to people about is that, you know, clinical trials are so key to all the success that we've had in oncology to this day. You know, there's been an explosion of new medicines out there for multiple myeloma just over the last 10 or 15 years. The medicines we're using today didn't exist in 1990s. You know, they're all developed since the 2000s, and they've transformed the way we care for multiple myeloma, and it's all because of successful participation in clinical trials. And so it's really, you know, important that we have, you know, participation and representation for people in these trials, so that we can further advance, you know, our care for multiple myeloma and allow people to do even better. And so that's a lot of what I talk about. I think it's also important to know that, you know, there's a lot of misperceptions about, you know, the medicines that we're using in clinical trials, and maybe how new they are, or, you know, whether we know a lot about them. You know, a lot of trials that we're conducting or doing, these are medicines that we actually know a lot about, and we're just using them in slightly different combinations. Sometimes, you know, they're medicines that are already approved by the FDA for use later on in somebody's journey, but now we're trying to use them earlier to see if it's better to use earlier than later. So a lot of people think that clinical trials are medicines we know nothing about or never used before. And that is true. We do have some trials like that. Those are called phase 1 trials, where these are medicines that we don't know much about and we're really trying to learn more. But a lot of the trials, we actually know a lot about the drugs, and we already know about their safety. We're just kind of using them in a slightly different way. And so explaining that can sometimes be very helpful to engage participation, because people feel more comfortable knowing that we have experience with these medicines already. So I kind of use that combination of strategies. And the other thing is I talk to everybody about it. You know, I don't try to like self-select necessarily and say, oh, this person is good for a trial, this one's not. I really, if somebody's even like potentially eligible, I just talk about it and make them aware that these are options that they have, so that they have time to think about it. And I think by talking, the more people you talk to about it, the more people you give the opportunity to participate in, the more likely people are going to be open and interested in participating.
Great, thank you. And that's so key, because, you know, talking to everyone about it, it also lets, I'm sure your patients know that the lines of communication are open. So it's a shared decision process, right? So patients have questions, you know, it's the back and forth. And I think introducing it early is so key, because then it's not a surprising conversation when you get to the point where a patient is eligible for a clinical trial. So, thank you for your efforts with that. Pat and Paul, we're going to close out the section before we move on to Q&As. But I do want to ask you, in addition to your care team and even your family members, what sort of resources have you found useful in your journey? Whether it be with other myeloma groups or even a church group, whatever it might be, to really just kind of help you stay in the right frame of mind, help you find good, credible information. What has proved helpful?
Well, for me, it's been my family, basically my family. They all know what I have, what I'm, they're so proud of where I'm at now. I'm proud of where I'm at now. And, my social workers at Jefferson on the team, of course, Dr. Bender, he's my #1 go-to person if I need anything. But basically, I do a lot of reading. If I have any questions, I ask when I go to the doctor. That's basically it for me. Mm-hmm.
For me, it was a little bit different than what I would normally do. I mean, I had to, I get a lot of support from family, friends, the community around me. I had to do something different than I normally do, which is say, I'm not okay and I need help and I need support and I'm going through something that is a little bit rough. And the amount of people that lined up to get me whatever I need, whether it was getting the house ready for me to come home, helping my family while I was in the hospital, it's inspiring.
Thank you, Paul. I know it's not always easy to put yourself in that position, especially you described yourself as a DIYer, so you were probably the one doing the support and the work. So
although my wife just says I'm too cheap to pay somebody to do it.
No, thank you so much to all three of you for being on the panel, Paul and Pat especially for sharing your story. I know it takes a certain amount of vulnerability to sit here and just really talk through this, so thank you. All right, so all right, so we're going to open it up for Q&As. We've got folks walking the room with microphones. If you have a question, please raise your hand.
Sorry, Cam.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Bender, my question is, the clinical trials, are there the ones that you offer to each patient as an individual, don't they sometimes have side effects to that patient and maybe not have a side effect to someone else?
Yeah, I mean, all medicines. I think that's a good question. I think a big concern when people enroll in clinical trials is, are there going to be side effects that we're not aware of, or are new things going to come out that are unpredictable? And I think that it's true that can happen, but all medicines have side effects, and all medicines affect people in different ways. Some of these medicines we use, people keep working, they go to work, they feel fine afterwards. Other people get very sick from them, and so everybody as an individual is a little different in how they respond to different medicines. When people are on clinical trials, if it is a medicine that we haven't used before, or even if it is a medicine we have used before, there's a lot of extra layers of support that go into having somebody on a clinical trial. There's extra nursing staff that are overseeing it. People come in for extra visits. Being on a clinical trial is not easy. There's actually a lot of extra testing, extra visits with the doctor, extra visits with the nurses. It can be sometimes be very burdensome, but that burden is there for safety, because we like to check in with people more. We do a little bit extra to make sure that we're not having side effects that are unexpected or unknown. So it's a lot of extra work for the person participating in the trial, but it's all there to ensure that if something unexpected happens, we catch it and we address it early before it gets serious.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Because I have a relative who's going through it, and she's at Jeff, but I don't want to mention her name because, she doesn't know that I'm here. and I know she's going through a clinical trial. And one she had, she was very sick, so to speak. And now this clinical trial is working pretty good for her. And I'm just saying, I just pray every day, you know, that you find a niche for her, you know, to make everything work. And that's why I was asking. But thank you so much for the information.
Hi. I just wanted to know, is there a certain period of time for trials? Are they all the same? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? 3 months? Do they all run around the same, or it depends on the trial?
Yeah, that's another great question. So clinical trials are very varied, and they're very specific. So, you know, they're designed for certain phases. So it could be like, oh, I'm newly diagnosed with multiple myeloma, and their trial's designed for that. Or their trial's designed for when the myelomas come back one time, or maybe if it's come back a couple times, you know, it's designed to kind of look at how effective it is there. So some of the specifics are about the individual and where they are in their journey with their cancer. And then the duration also varies for some of these trials, and it depends on how it's designed. A lot of treatment for multiple myeloma is what we call continuous treatment, where people stay on a treatment that's working for as long as it's working. And so most the trials that are developed now for multiple myeloma are designed until until progression, until it stops working. So it's usually, hopefully, people are on the trial for a very long time because that means it's working. And often it's a combination of medicines, and so sometimes they're getting all those medicines for a period of time, and then you take some of those away and you're only on one or two for a little bit longer. Sometimes it's just one medicine, so there's a lot of variation involved.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for coming with all of this good information. We're hearing a lot about clinical trials, but how successful are the general treatments for this condition?
Yeah, another great question. So the general treatments for multiple myeloma today are very, very successful. You know, even without clinical trial participation, people can do very well with the current treatments available.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sir, when you find a treatment that is working wonderfully for a patient, and you decide that you will stay with that medication, and then the patient rolls off of the clinical trial, what if the drug company decides, yeah, this is a wonderful drug, let's shoot the price up to the moon? What do you do then? What is the patient expected to do then? And how can you help them remain covered by that wonderful drug you introduced them to?
Yeah, so that's where, the right care team comes into play. It's not just me. I mean, I have very little to do with helping get coverage for those medicines, but, at a lot of cancer centers, sorry, there's a lot of feedback. At a lot of the cancer centers, both community and otherwise, we have a whole financial team that helps us. We fill out, copay assistance forms. Some of the drug companies have copay assistance. There's a lot of grants that are available through like MMRF, LLS, and other organizations that help with copays. So we do a lot of paperwork to ensure that people can continue on the medicines that are working.
Thanks, Wen. Dr. Bender, question for you. We all know that myeloma affects the black population more than the white population. However, participation in clinical trials from the black population is extremely low. Is Jefferson doing anything to improve that statistic?
Thanks for that question. A little bit of a layup. So for us, so Jefferson actually does very well within enrollment of its Black and African American community. When we look back over the last 4 or 5 years, among multiple myeloma clinical trials, about 40% of people who enroll in trials identify as Black or African American, which is representative of the patient population that we serve. You know, about 40 to 45% of the patients with multiple myeloma at Jefferson identify as Black or African American. So I think we're doing a good job, you know, at Jefferson already, and I think a lot of it has to do with just our relationships with our patients and some of the conversations I mentioned before about just always talking about clinical trials, always making people aware of what's available, and just having honest and open conversations about you know, why this may or may not be the right choice for people. And you know, a lot of times I tell people it's not the right choice for them because it's just at that point in time it's not the right thing. So I think as a larger community, I think that there's, you know, 2 or 3 things that we need to do to help make sure that clinical trials for multiple myeloma are representative of the people that actually have multiple myeloma. One of them, I think, is dispelling a lot of myths about clinical trials, that some of which we're talking about today, in terms of, you know, what we're actually trying to achieve and, you know, what we're trying to do, and how a lot of this is, again, you know, medicines that we know a lot about already. It's not any sort of experimentation, but just kind of changing the combinations and using it in different lines of therapy, maybe earlier as opposed to later. I think some of it too, in my mind, is just opening the trials where people are. So, you know, before I was at Jefferson, I was at Montefiore Medical Center in the Bronx. You know, Montefiore Medical Center services a population that was primarily African American, West African, and Dominican. And you know, people weren't knocking down our doors to open clinical trials at Montefiore. We were knocking on their doors to try to get them open there. If you open a clinical trial at Montefiore, anybody that enrolls in that clinical trial is going to be of, you know, minority, underrepresented minorities. Most likely they're going to be Black or Hispanic. You know, a lot of trials opened up at like Dana-Farber's and Mass General's. Their population is primarily Caucasian. So, you know, I think we need to do a better job of bringing the trials to the communities as opposed to trying to bring the communities to the trials.
Good morning. I just want to add to the statement the lady over there made about the trouble with the drug companies. As it's stated, it's finding the right doctor, the right treatment. And sometimes when you go to the specialist, they're only looking at one thing. And they're not offering you these options. Also, for them to justify these treatments and for the drawback is the insurance company. But I hate to say it, it's money. And you made the mention, the gentleman over here, of why the Black community, a lot of the Black community don't have the resources or the family, especially the elderly that don't have anyone to direct them to the right social worker, to the right doctor, but you have to find the right team and the right treatment for any illness that you have. And this being an illness that we are not too familiar with, we don't mention it to our doctor. We go in, like he said, for our back pain or for our blood pressure. And unless someone tells you, well, there's other options or we want to take other tests, that's where it ends. And then who can afford the medicine? Because the insurance companies don't want to even pay for brand medicine now. Some of my blood pressure medicine has been changed to generic. So that's the drawback, not only for this disease, for other diseases. That's just my observation.
No,
I think we got time for one more question.
I don't have a question, I have a statement. My daughter was in a trial program at Jefferson Hospital, and she got the best treatment. I think we all are afraid of when they say trial, you know, the trial thing. Everybody's afraid of it. But She got the best care. She got the best attention. She's still on one of her medications. She's been cancer-free for 11 years and haven't had a problem. So I do recommend trial treatments. And my husband did have multiple myeloma. He had blood and bone cancer. He didn't survive because he had a lot of other things going on. But I recommend the trial programs for us black people.
Thank you.
All right, no, thank you. Thank you again to our panelists. Thank you for all the questions and the comments. I think one, there's a whole host of takeaways, with what we've talked about. Something that kept coming up is really just exploring your resources, having conversations with your entire care team, ask questions, continue to ask questions. You can never ask too many questions. And then also connecting yourselves with organizations, again, like the MMRF, with Jefferson, with, health, any kind of organization that really will serve your medical needs, and look for those resources because, there are folks out there willing to help. It's just a matter of being linked to them. Thank you again to our panelists. Can we give them another round of applause? And then we are going to break for a 5-minute break. I think just stretch if you want to do a little twist, and then we'll get right into the second session.
Thank
all right,
you.
Thank you all.
Applause for Miss Ala. And before everyone takes off, earlier I asked who all has been to West Oak Lane before. The majority of the group has, but I very intentionally did not say welcome to West Oak Lane because, as I mentioned, I'm coming from Atlanta. I'm a guest, and we are here in your home, and we appreciate you all for being willing to host us. And with that, we wanted to make sure to proactively say thank you to a very special woman y'all are probably familiar with, Miss Kathy. And Miss Kathy, if we could ask you to come to the front, because this would not be possible without her and her team, Frank and Norman, who have been an incredible help. So Miss Kathy, I know she might just have a few words for you all. One more time, let's big shout out to Miss Kathy.
Is it on? Can you guys hear me?
You can try this.
There we go. Okay, there we are. Good afternoon. Actually, good morning. I'm rushing us through it. Thank you all so much for sitting in with us today, and thank you to both of these organizations, Acclimate and the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation. Thank you for finding us, and thank you for collaborating with us to make it a beautiful day. You have transformed our center into a real learning experience, and we're appreciative of it. Thank you so much. And just a couple of things on the actual topic, just to kind of give us a meaningful moment, a teachable moment. I'm going to ask, since this is education coming to our community, that those who have the ability to do the education to allow us as African Americans to retrust the medical community. When we think about the Tuskegee experiment, and when we think about the HeLa cells and things of that sort, it has left a stain for us when it comes to the medical community. So I need for the medical community to come alongside of us, especially in a new generation where millennials do not go to the doctors as much as we do, but they got stories. And so we need for you guys to fix that for us, okay? We're open. It just needs to be fixed. And then we also need for you to be willing amongst our senior community, our low-income community, our African-American communities, to allow us to be able to afford the fixed. If it's going to fix it, allow it to be in a range where we can have access to it readily so that our families can be okay, so that our generational wealth can really grow. So with that being said, I thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Kathy. So we'll go into a short break. Perfect. So please, stretch, grab some coffee and water, and visit our vendors downstairs. We've got a ton of visitors who have really great educational material to share, and we'll be back up here. Be back up in 15 minutes. Thank you.
All right, folks, I know people are having fun downstairs. Hopefully people can join the fun back upstairs very soon. But we'll go ahead and kick off with session 2. So in session 1, the title was Navigating Multiple Myeloma in Philly. Excuse me, it was Multiple Myeloma in Philadelphia. And one of the things we talked about was the right track. Does anyone remember the 3 items? Thank you. Anyone remember the 3 steps to being on the right track? It was covered in that first session. I'll give you a hint. The first one was right team. Right team. Second one, anyone remember the second piece of the right track? All is giving a hint. Okay, right test. Thank you. So right team, right test. What's the final piece to being on the right track? I heard right treatment. That's the third one. So we want to make sure that as we're going through these sessions, there's so much to take away from the different panelists, from the information the MMRF is giving. So thank you all again for being here. In this session today, or this second session that we have, we're going to talk about navigating the multiple myeloma journey, and Ala is, again, our lovely moderator.
Thank you, Wen. All right, so we'll wait for, there are folks coming in from downstairs, but we'll just go ahead and get started. So with our second panel, and we've got a team of just lovely folks here, and I can't wait to introduce them and jump in. So in this session, we'll be talking about navigating the myeloma journey. So with our first session, you heard from, our physician, you heard from our patient speakers, just about what they've been through so far, but we'll delve a little bit deeper this time and just hear each person's story and their perspectives. So first, I'd like to introduce Miss Lucretia Agee. We go way back, and it's such a pleasure to have you on. I know, life, has been busy, and, you definitely do keep busy. Ms. Agee has built a 30-year career in the pharmaceutical industry with multiple companies. One thing that I always love to just say about you is just how busy you are with your community involvement. When you're at church, she was telling me, reminding me that she sings every Sunday at church. So this microphone, no problem. And just even your involvement in your sorority and kind of the worship and fine arts ministry at your church, and also she serves as the chair of the Cancer Awareness and Support Ministry, and that has been for over 10 years, and is just a very big advocate on when it comes to health and wellness and really, educating others about multiple myeloma. So thank you very much, Ms. Agee. And then I will go to Dr. Amira Clemens. Dr. Amira Clemens is a practicing nurse of over 17 years who has lived in Philadelphia all of her life. So thank you. She's a local. She can fill us in on all of the great resources that are available to everyone. Currently, she participates in community health and engagement and uses the community health and engagement to educate residents on cancer screening, treatment, and clinical trials. So I'm reading here that you navigate focus groups and help with different data, and you're presently the Cancer Care Companion with the intention to help improve cancer outcomes and reduce cancer risks. Thank you. Mr. Don, our multiple miracle man. Look, I'm going to say that every time I mention your name. So Mr. Don is our multiple miracle man. He was first diagnosed in February of 2015 and remained in remission until December 2023 and will be going on to his second stem cell. He's also the founder of Team Don Austin, which is an organization dedicated to transforming communities through the powerful combination of cycling, advocacy, and fundraising initiatives for multiple sclerosis. And he's just done a lot of work in promoting health and fostering community engagement. Thank you for joining us. All right, Dr. Rose DeMarco is the Oncology Pharmacy Manager at Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center at Jefferson Health and Thomas Jefferson University Hospital in Philadelphia. And she received her Doctor of Pharmacy degree at the Philadelphia College of Pharmacy and is board certified in pharmacotherapy and oncology. So thank you. Please help me welcome our panelists. All right, so we're going to start with Mr. Don, our multiple miracle man. I told you. I'm going to say it every time. It's okay. So this journey has not been an easy one for you, as you're also battling another chronic condition, multiple sclerosis. So tell us what has been key to your still showing up as an advocate for both MS and also for multiple myeloma.
Well, hello, Tessie, okay. So in 2008, I was diagnosed with MS, multiple sclerosis. 2015, diagnosed with multiple myeloma. I had my first stem cell transplant then. Between that time, I started Team Down Austin, the cycling team. I was raising money for MS. I started the foundation just about 2 years ago. So I've brought awareness to the community, specifically to the Black and Brown community, about MS. And now I'm dealing with the stem cell, the second stem cell, which is also a therapy for multiple sclerosis. So through cycling, through community awareness, and I've just been trying to enlighten everybody I come across to, my journey, and, that it's not a death sentence, and neither one is a death sentence, not in my eyes. Because like I said, I've started a cycling team. We raised $20,000 for the MS Society. I rode 100 miles. I'm still at work, so no, it's not a death sentence. You can still live and navigate with all of this.
Thank you, Don. So, Ms. Lucretia, I'm going to come over to you next. Your journey also has not been easy, but you continue to remain extremely active with advocacy work in your church, sorority, and other organizations. So, how did you position yourself to manage multiple myeloma long term?
Thank you so much, Ola. Myeloma is a very ugly illness. And one thing I decided very early on, it was not going to be the center of my universe. So I've been a myeloma survivor, thriver, overcomer for 15 years now. Thank you. I've gone through 2 transplants, 2 rounds of radiation, multiple chemotherapy regimens, and am currently in a clinical trial. Throughout all of that time, I've lost the ability to walk, the ability to run. I used to be a track coach, multiple Don. I used to be a fitness coach, but I can't do those things anymore. So what did I do? I decided that multiple myeloma was not going to take my joy. I decided to give back in other ways, become an advocate for anybody who had any illness, anytime, any day of the week. So I started the cancer awareness ministry at my church over 10 years ago. That led me to the community oncology board at the Morristown Hospital in North Jersey, where I'm on the committee. That led me to the African American Wellness Coalition, where I'm also on the steering committee. That led me to the Martin Luther King Observance Committee, which I'm also on the board of. So anything that involves helping others, putting myeloma in the back seat, is what I'm about. It's about helping others, because the second you start having pity parties, that's when you're defeated. And God didn't put me here to be defeated. This is a very tough illness. It's a very long journey. But the blessing for me was I was diagnosed in 2009. But 3 years prior to that, my oldest brother, I'm the youngest of 10 children, and my oldest brother went into the hospital for a knee replacement surgery. When they opened up his leg, they found myeloma. So don't ever neglect things that hurt you, as the gentleman said earlier. Go find out what it is. Myeloma is a smoldering illness. It hides out everywhere. Mine started out as chains, light chains, free-flowing in the blood. Now it's turned into a sacral mass in my sacral region, a lesion in my sacral region. So don't just discount the fact that getting old ain't for sissies. True, but don't discount pain. Don't discount anything. take it for granted that it might be something. So go find out what it is. And that's just such a key takeaway from any time you hear anybody say, I have this, I have that. Don't think, oh, never me. God put us here for a purpose, and one of my purposes is to help others. So, yes, I give back.
You certainly do, Lucretia, and I'm always so amazed by all that you do, and now I can be amazed by, you know, our miracle man. And, you know, it's so great just to see how empowered you both are, how you've taken, you know, your diagnosis, but then, you know, used it to affect change, not only in your lives, but also in your community. And, you know, Rose, I want to hand it over to you because meeting multiple patients, different patients, as they come in for treatments, and I'm sure emotions, you know, are all over the place for certain patients, but can you help share with us just how best patients can set themselves up for receiving treatments, and even maybe some examples of questions that patients might want to ask their care team, because we've talked a lot about care teams. So as a member of that care team, what are those key questions?
Sure. Those are great questions. I think the first thing that I would say is, as a patient, your most important job, your most important responsibility is to ask questions and, you know, allow us to give you the education that you need to make the most appropriate decision for your care. And as a pharmacist, you know, my passion is always on medication education and medication safety, and how can patients, you know, truly understand what they're taking. So it's not just what medication are you prescribing me, it's how long will I be on this treatment? Why did you choose this treatment for me? What side effects to expect and when to expect them? And those are all great questions for your care team. I think it can be really overwhelming to be in an office visit with us, especially at a center like Jefferson, where there might be 4 or 5 people in the room asking questions or trying to give you information and education. So if you can come in with questions ready, type them on your phone, write a note down so you don't forget, because the worst thing, I think, and as a, you know, as a patient myself, not from myeloma but other conditions, the worst thing you can do is leave your appointment and feel like you didn't get your questions answered, or go home later that night and say, you know, I still don't quite understand what happened today at my appointment. And I think you should always feel empowered to ask questions, even when you feel like the appointment has been rushed, or you feel like, you know, we're trying to keep moving. That's not always the case, and I think if you let us know that you have questions that haven't been answered, then that's our job to answer them. And there are so many resources available, not just through your physician's office or your primary care doctor, but through organizations like the MMRF, and even at your community centers like this. They just ask the questions and, you know, and make sure someone gives you an answer.
No, that's great feedback, Rose. And you know, we come back again to the sense of empowering yourself as a patient and knowing that everything that happens in your care, it's a shared decision-making process. Your care team gives you information, you ask questions, but definitely everyone should be coming out of any, you know, appointments enlightened and comfortable that, okay, the best decisions have been made and I've gotten all my questions answered. And I tell the same thing to my parents as well, because, you know, they come home and they ask 50 questions and I say, well, what did you discuss? And they said, well, we just figured we'd save it for you, but, you know, you want to ask those questions at that time and not let yourself feel rushed. So, you know, thank you for that. I think it always helps to hear it from a member of the care team, yes. So, Lucretia, I'm going to come back to you. You mentioned earlier that part of your treatment has included clinical research, and you're currently enrolled in a trial now. Share with us just, you know, how that went. Did you have any hesitations? What has your experience been like? And, you know, I mentioned earlier, we're all family here. We're sharing the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, everything. So, you know, just lay it out and tell us how that has gone.
So my current treatment is, part of that is a home dispensed clinical trial drug. I've been on it now for nearly 2 years. We've made adjustments in the dosage because, as the gentleman said earlier, one size does not fit all. And it was started out at a much higher dose than a little person like me needed. So we've made adjustments. But being in the clinical trial has shown me that there's nothing really to fear. And I know that because day to day, my work is in clinical trials. The doctors who are over my care, my oncologists, are over the trials that are being run at Georgetown for multiple myeloma. So everything that they know, I pretty much know. So there was no fear, no hesitation going into this. And my objective is always to know as much as I possibly can before I go into anything. And when I get to my appointments, my doctor sits there and he says, "What are we going to do for you today?" He waits for me to define it because I am a very active participant in my own treatment, in my own care. And it's important that you be that way. If you can't have someone go with you and read the signs for you and translate everything for you, before you get there, know as much as you possibly can about what you're going into. Clinical trials aren't a death sentence. They're not the end of the road for myeloma. Myeloma has a number of approved drugs in the market already. But for certain types of myeloma traces, this one has changed. It actually changed its course. It became smarter. It used to flow everywhere in my body, but now it decided to settle itself into a little mass, a sacral mass, which is right here. That's no fun. That's where you sit, and that's a hard thing to manage. But this particular trial focuses on that. I knew a part of it focused on that, which is what led me to be so accepting of this trial. And praise God, my PET scans are showing no active myeloma at this point, which is a good thing. That's a very good thing. I've gone through this, as I said earlier, 15 years. I've had 4 relapses, and that led to radiation. We didn't do radiation before we started this. And now I'm doing everything that I did before on a different scale. I'm not running, I'm walking very, very fast.
Now, thank you, Lucretia. You know, it's always just great to hear about your experiences. And I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Amir Clemens. You know, for individuals like Lucretia, you know, going through clinical trials, and even, I know we talked about it briefly in the first session, just how to navigate it. What resources are out there to help someone, you know, confidently navigate participating in clinical research? We heard earlier, you know, there's a lot of paperwork. You know, again, safety measures are in place, but, you know, sometimes we'll hear folks say the concern is, well, how do I get there? How can I afford it? You know, there's so many other things that we have to consider in our day-to-day lives. So what, you know, advice and what information do you have to share in that regard?
So first, I'm going to preface this by saying events like this, where we can spread awareness and people get the information firsthand, is incredibly important. And then people like me, from my position with the Lazarus Cancer Foundation, is to provide information to individuals within the community who don't know how to navigate, and they need somebody to help them navigate, because my position is to educate, provide information on clinical trials and cancer itself to individuals who are reluctant and afraid of talking to a healthcare provider. And in the education, I provide them with, you know, what the facts are, because I think earlier what the gentleman was talking about, a lot of myths with the clinical trials and just cancer in general in our community. So finding organizations like this and navigating to someone like me who can help you through the system, but also with starting with education, because one of the key reasons why people of color don't participate in clinical trials is because we don't have the education and the information. And organizations like the National Cancer Institute, the American Cancer Society, they have a lot of information that's free and available for people. And then finding support, like, nobody knows what you're going through, like somebody also going through it. Finding support groups like Cancer Support Community, organizations like that. And then if you're considering going through a clinical trial, but you don't necessarily know where to go, there's organizations like, websites like clinicaltrials.gov that you can find information. And then there's organizations like the one I work for, the Lazarus Cancer Foundation, that can help with financial support when there's an issue with financial support. And then talking to your healthcare providers, like
Dr. Bender.
Dr. Bender, I was looking to see if Dr. Bender, because sometimes your providers have the information that you need that you would otherwise not know existed in order to participate or just to find information. And then finally, like somebody like me who's, my position in the community is to help navigate, because one of the things that happens is when people are diagnosed, they hear that C word, they lose all senses, they can't remember, sometimes they can't even remember their own name, and they need somebody to advocate for them. So if you don't have a family member who you feel comfortable, or if family members are not the best person because they're saying, oh, I don't think you should do this, I don't think they're practicing on you, you're a guinea pig, you navigate towards somebody like me in the community who's doing events like this, and in the community with my team, you come to me and I can help do the navigation for you. I can find those organizations for you. And then at the end of it, when I gathered all the information and I have a conversation with you, I can help you make the right choices for what you need to do for your diagnosis, your treatment, or any other resources that you need for navigating your cancer journey.
Wonderful, thank you. We've talked a lot about, just, again, the topic for this session is just navigating, your myeloma journey, and everyone has given just wonderful perspectives just based on either professional experience or personal experience. So I'd like for each of our panelists, and Rose, I'll start with you, if you could just give some advice to others who are, folks who are navigating their myeloma journey, what would it be? And I know we said one sentence, but we've got a little bit of time, so feel free to expound, yes.
Sure. So I think my one sentence to you would be to, remember that we're here for you. You're not, you don't come to the office to see us for a reason other than your health. So get what you need from that appointment. Ask for help. The resources are there. And make sure that you have everything you need to be comfortable with the decisions you're making.
Well, let's see. The first time I was diagnosed with myeloma, I really didn't accept it. The second time, it's been weighing heavy. But for both issues, both times, it has to be a lifestyle change. You have to do stuff differently. Eat healthier. Just pay attention to your body. Pay attention to what's going on in your surroundings. Your health is like the most important. You give up certain, I haven't had a drink since December. But, there's things I can't do. I'm out, even though I haven't been cycling as much as I want to, I still manage to, get in 20, 30 miles at a time. So you got to take care of yourself. So that's it.
One of our coins that we use with the Lazarus Cancer Foundation is cancer is killing us in the Black community, but it doesn't have to. We want you to screen it, treat it, beat it. That's what we say within our community. And understand that a lot of people they're looking for a cure. They're feeling like there should be a cure for cancer already. But cancer is not a single disease, it's a multiple disease. And understanding that if we change our screening practices and our healthcare practices and going to the doctors when we're supposed to, we can find cancer early enough and understand that there may not be a cure, but there is effective treatments available. And if you find it early enough, then your outlook is awesome. So don't let the cancer diagnosis defeat you. Just get to, understand that it's just part of a journey that you were chosen to take, and that it's, you're just going to be an advocate, and you're going to be the voice for other people who may end up in the same position. So that's what I usually tell people.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well. When I was first correctly diagnosed with multiple myeloma, they put me in the hospital after my doctor had gotten the scans back. And I found out a little bit later that the floor they put me on was for terminal patients. I saw the scans with my doctor. My ribs were absolutely translucent. There were so many holes in my brain caused by the lesions that it looked like Swiss cheese. So they had reason to put me in the terminal ward. They thought they had reason. In the middle of the night, I checked myself out of that hospital. They were giving me fluids, and they did a bone marrow test. But they didn't come and check on me. This was a regional hospital, a much smaller facility than I was accustomed to. So I checked myself out of that hospital and went home and found my care team. I found them, and I've been with them now for 15 years. That first doctor, I was 52 years old when I went to that first doctor, and she said, "You won't see your 53rd birthday." Yeah, okay. Okay. I'm 67. Yeah. Yeah, I'm 67. She said, "You won't walk again." I said, "I drove myself here, thank you very much." But she said, "You won't walk," because my legs had turned as black as these tablecloths. Myeloma had eaten away everything in me. That's how close I was. My blood markers were through the roof. Dr. Wiesel, when he looked at the original reports, said, "I've never seen numbers this high, markers this high." The markers that I'm talking about are things called light chains and all of those. But anyway, that can get very technical. I won't go into that. But the numbers were through the roof, which leads someone who has no faith, who doesn't have hope, to think, yeah, I need to put her in the terminal ward. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, I like that word, terminal ward. Anyway, my takeaway from all of this is surround yourself with the care team that's going to do the service for you, that you know you are deserving of. And this is whether or not it's myeloma, multiple sclerosis. It doesn't matter what your illness is. Surround yourself with people who you know are capable of being that support system, who are going to fight for you, with you, around you. My doctor sometimes, when they mentioned, the first time they mentioned Lucretia and clinical trial in the same sentence, I heard them outside of the room. And they were like, "Who's going to go in there and tell them?" I ain't telling them. I ain't going to tell her, you tell her. So finally, little bitty pregnant nurse walked in the room. They knew I wouldn't hit her. So they sent her in the room. And it was just a very, but we're family. Doctor, we share everything. But it was just so funny that they were afraid to tell me this. And Dr. Wiesel said, It's because we know you do this every day and you know as much about these trials as we do. Yeah, I know, but the fact of the matter is we have to educate ourselves. We educate ourselves with resources like the Myeloma Research Foundation, like Dr. Clemens here, who are available to us and for us. And you would be surprised how easy it is to reach someone. I say that because they made me a community resource navigator for the American Cancer Society. And unfortunately, I was too reachable. People were reaching me all middle of the night. You know, my auntie got this pain here, look. You know, it just turned into such a challenge, but I never backed away from that. I make jokes about it, but that's just my nature. Y'all see me making jokes. Don't ever deny yourself the ability to research, find out who is best at this, who knows the most, who can help me the most, who can recommend the best care for me. I would not be here had I not been my own best advocate. Sure, I should not have been driving. And I knew if I looked in my rear view, there were 2 cars behind me that were following me to work every day. People from my church and people who were friends of mine. My son sicked them on me because he knew I would recognize his car. So he told them to follow me in their car. So I would see all of these cars following me. And I knew it, but I knew that they were my angels. They were my walking angels on earth. And God still had work for me to do. So just surround yourself and give back. Whatever you learn, tell somebody else. Through this 15-year journey, I have met more people who are not only myeloma patients, but who have family members, friends that are myeloma patients. I was talking to a lady the other day who's on the board with me of Martin Luther King, and she asked me, how are you feeling? I said, well, I got a PET scan coming up for the myeloma piece. And she said, my nephew has that. So that night her nephew called me. He's brand new to the illness, was scared to death of it. And he had to be told that this is not a death sentence. So I saw him Sunday, this past Sunday, for the very first time. And we both cried. Because seeing anything where you see hope on the horizon gives you an opportunity to keep fighting. And that's what we have to do. Cancer is a nemesis. It's a little deadly monster, and every morning I get up and I squash it under my foot, and I said, not today, not yet. I know that this is not, I'm not delusional to think that I'm going to be here forever, but I tell Dr. Wiesel, I'm hanging around until you find a cure. Would you hurry up and do that, please? Because he is a part of the team developing the trials, working on the trials, and now they're getting ready to put him over transplant in Georgetown. So I know I'm in good hands. He supervised 2 transplants for me, one in 2009, and one in 2019. So that's a 10-year span that he watched one thing work, where I went into remission for 4 years, and then we had a setback. Setback does not mean you're out of the game. It just means that you're stalled until something comes along to move that mountain. Well, we already know what mountain moving equipment we got. We have an ultimate GPS, so we don't worry about mountains. Our mountains become molehills. Anyway, use the resources that are available to you. Contact MMRF. They're going to give you all kinds of information downstairs. Go to it. Find it. Go to the Fox Chase table. Find it. If there's something you have questions about, don't be afraid to ask it. Don't be afraid to have a big voice in the room, a very big voice. When I was a little girl, I've been singing since I was 4 years old. I used to sing with the Mississippi Mass Choir. And when I was 6 years old, I sang at some function or other. And I remember a man coming up to me saying, "How you get all that noise out of that little bitty body?" I said, "Well, I'm the baby of 10. I had to have a big voice. Otherwise, nobody would hear me." So speak up for yourselves. That's my takeaway.
All right. Well, I have nothing else to add. I think Lucretia summed it up perfectly. So we're going to open it up for questions.
I don't have a question, but your attitude is so positive. Anything that's wrong with me, I can just look at you. You are an example to all of us. I thank you for everything that you said. You know, you just make me feel so important. And can you give us a song?
I could. We have a group of people at our church, and we call them seasoned citizens. We don't refer to ourselves as old. We refer to ourselves as seasoned citizens. And I appreciate seasoned citizens. My mother was 96 years old when she left us and went to heaven. And I still see her every night up in the sky. "Cretia, did you do this? Cretia, did you do that?" I'm like, I look right back at her and I said, "Cretia, did you do?" Her name was Lucretia as well. My father was 95 when he left. So we're seasoned citizens and we walk with each other. We have to take care of each other. That's very important for us to do. And maybe if you put a dollar in the bucket, I might.
Any additional questions for our panelists?
Maybe good afternoon, maybe a little elementary, but do you feel pain in your muscles and not pain in your bone?
Don and Lucretia, I'll let you both answer those questions.
Well, I really don't feel any pain. I haven't, like the first time I was diagnosed, my collarbone fractured, and like, well, what happened? You know, I've been cycling and doing all this stuff, and now my collarbone fractures. I just thought it was a gym injury, and I go back to Abington Hospital and test after test, and at about 2 a.m. they tell me, you need to call this doctor, you need to call this doctor. They said, you need to call this doctor in the morning, like ASAP. So I go down to Jefferson, and they do more tests, and I had a tumor here. Hello? I had a tumor in my collarbone, which caused it to fracture. I had a tumor in my back and one on my kidney. So, hello?
Don't push the button. Don't push the button.
Oh, don't push
it.
Oh, don't push
the button.
Okay, sorry. Was hello? Okay. And that's when I was diagnosed, so I haven't felt any pain since then. But you know, it's mental, emotional pain, but nothing physical, not at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me. As far as my pain level, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 0. I don't have pain. Honestly, I do not have pain. I cannot remember the last time I took a pain medication. When I was first diagnosed, pain was everywhere. There was not a spot on my body that I could not point to and say, that doesn't hurt. Everything hurt. But as I got more determined to fight this devil, pain became a minor thing. I started back on my yoga. I couldn't run anymore, which was always therapeutic for me. But I couldn't do that anymore because Dr. Visa would have had me arrested. So rather than run, I remembered the things that I used to do before running. I remembered my yoga. I remembered my meditation. That takes away pain. Keeping yourself focused on spirituality, keeping yourself focused on things that center you can be a really good relief for pain.
Okay. Hi. I would just like to make a statement. I would first of all like to thank you guys for sharing with us this very important information. I know that sharing something personal is not an easy task. So we say thank you for bringing your story front for us today. And then thank you for the energy that you are creating in this room. You know, one thing we know about when you go to college, you become closer to the people that you learn with. And so there is an energy in this room right now as we are learning some things together that will forever keep us connected. We also are real clear that in African American communities, we weren't raised necessarily with tell your business. But what we understand about not doing that is we keep important information away from those who need it. And we have to learn to let that information be a part of our family stories. There's never a good time to share what could be heavy news. But maybe at Thanksgiving, we do have to say, okay, we need a serious moment to just say some things that's going on in our bodies. We always have good dinners together, but we don't include some of our medical information that could actually save our lives. So thank you for freeing us. Thank you for the energy that's raised in this room as we learn together today. I thank you for the brave. I thank you for your ability to share with us in a way that we could receive it. Not every learner can receive from every teacher. I receive all the information you guys are giving us today, and I thank you for it. God bless you all.
Yes. I would just like to thank our director.
I'm sorry, I wanted to respond to
with
her.
her all the time about CCT. But she is a very compassionate director. She participates in our programs. She don't just sit there, she actually participates. And I want to thank her for all the educational programs that she has brought to us. Now, this don't stop me from fussing. Yes, yes, but I just want to thank her for bringing you to us.
Thank you, love. I wanted to respond to Kathy. Kathy, okay. I'm grateful that you made that statement because one of the barriers within the community that I serve is that people, cancer is a shameful disease. Yeah. And people will less likely find out that a family member died from cancer than any other incident. And it's to the detriment of the family members because we understand that we should be getting screened earlier, we should be looking for symptoms earlier, and we should be on top of it earlier if we know that we have a family history of that. And also, one of the barriers to recent focus groups that we've been doing in the faith communities where we serve is that people are reluctant to share information within the faith institution, even though it's a community, because they don't want people to know their business. And having that mindset and that practice actually is to our detriment, and it's also killing us.
Thank you, Dr. Clemens. Let's give it up one more time for our second panel and our panelists and our moderator. And we talked so much about the importance of sharing stories and how often in our communities and our families we don't feel as comfortable doing that, and that's part of why Now Included exists as a community platform. Our bread and butter, we say, is actually the stories, because we can talk all day about the numbers and the statistics and what's in the textbooks, but what really reaches people, what really sits with people in their minds and their hearts is the stories that come from our elders and even our young people. So that's why it's a digital and in-person platform, so that the stories that we hear here today, these cameras aren't here just, you know, for pretty pictures. Yes, y'all all look beautiful, but we hope that people after this will also watch and listen and hear, oh, wait, my aunt or my uncle has been going through similar things to Dawn and Lucretia, so let me point them to the MMRF and let me share their story on Now Included. So we hope to continue this conversation even afterwards on our platform. But with that, we got one more session before lunch, and we again don't like to talk at you the whole time, so we will give a 10-minute break and then come back for our last session, and then lunch is after that. So 10 minutes, if we could be back at about 12:17. We'll see you soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, everyone. I'm very excited to be moderating this last session. Everybody with me? Awesome. And just to reintroduce myself, I know I mentioned earlier, but my name is Wynn. I came from Atlanta, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Director of Community and Growth for Acclinate's Now Included community. And this session that we're about to have is actually called Empowering Patients and Caregivers. And it's a session and a topic that's close to my heart because I myself am a caregiver for my mother. She's a stroke survivor. She had a stroke back in 2015 that made it such that she couldn't really move the left side of her body, can no longer work. And I know from experience that the caregiver journey is a difficult one, but it's also a very rewarding one, and it's a very unique experience. So excited to talk to our panelists today about that journey. And on the panel, we have some really amazing folks. We have Lauriston and Esther. Lauriston is a multiple myeloma thriver, as we would say, and Esther is his caregiver. We have Jillian, who is from Penn Medicine and is an oncology nurse practitioner. And then we have Philip and Barbara Falkowitz, who are actually leaders of a support group that they'll tell you more about, but it's the biggest multiple myeloma support group in Delaware Valley. So definitely they are all going to be resources to you by way of the communities that they host as well as their personal experiences. And Phil, did you want to share your initial intro? How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
Okay, Phil has a quick intro that he wanted to kind of open the session with.
Hi. So I'm a long-term survivor, 27 years, 29 including my first episode with a plasmacytoma. But I'll start off with this, and I think there's a lot of people who relate to this as through the stories I heard. I've been nuked, poisoned, poked, punctured, stabbed, screwed, sliced, and glued, and tattooed from spinal surgeries and various protocols. So far, I've survived this and more. I can tell you, 27 years ago, this phrase, long-term survivor, was not in the myeloma lexicon. So I say so far because there's no cure yet. So that is something important I want to pass along. Listening to Lucretia, I had something to say about, my journey. My journey was completely different from most because 29 years ago when I had a plasmacytoma taken out of my body, it wasn't quite multiple myeloma yet, but I had the excruciating signs of pain and radiation and I don't know if we brought this term up today, but it's a term that none of us like but need, and it's called it's a steroid. Dexamethasone. And I haven't heard that word today, but it is an awesome drug that helps the other drugs work better, but by itself as a steroid, maybe my wife can tell you, it'll make you damn crazy. Absolutely crazy, and or you could probably And I've done, taken it as part of my regimen and then clean the house. I mean, clean every closet, wash every floor. You're an animal for a day, and then you pay for it the next couple of days when it wears off. But it was a tough time back in '97 because the doctors, and I went to Boston and I got a second opinion, and he said that my Penn doctor was on it and it was correct, but it wasn't really that correct. And as Lucia said, and I've said it to many people, myeloma is so smart. I mean, absolutely so smart. I mean, it's a shame it's a cancer because, it has a mind of its own and it just does horrible damage. And I have not had a drug holiday since I started in probably, well, in 1997. I've never had a drug holiday. I was fortunate enough to, because Penn at that time was not conducting clinical trials, I guess this probably was one of the first clinical trials with myeloma, and that was at Dana-Farber. I took a drug called Revlimid. It wasn't called Revlimid at that time. It was just CC 5013, and it saved my life. I mean, it took 2 or 3 years to get in remission, but absolutely, I ran with that drug for 22 years, almost 23 years, and it kind of gave out on me. And believe it or not, I was not in remission for the last year and a half. For the newcomers, and I've talked to Paul about it. He realizes that multiple myeloma is a roller coaster ride for as long as you can hang on. And luckily, I've been able to hang on for 27 years. Thank you. After 11 months on a newer drug, I'm back in remission, and my doctor's pleased. Obviously, I'm pleased. But that roller coaster has led me to taking extra drugs at certain times to get back in remission. It's a rewarding thing to know that in the last 10 years, the amount of drugs has just gone through the roof. And what's even better about that is the synergy of the drugs that can work together, as we call them, cocktails, and that few number of new drugs has exponentially grown to an absolute incredible number. If something doesn't work, there's always something else, and that's something everybody's got to take with them, to their friends and family. Don't despair. As I said, no need for a pity party. There are drugs out there that really work, and if they don't, you can find another one as easily as asking your doctor or she telling you, we have something else for you. And that's my doctor's been saying that for years. So I'm very proud to be up here. I really thank you very much for having us, Win and Ola. It was a great thing you did for the West Oak Lane community. And believe it or not, I grew up on Briar Road, 7200, which is just 2 blocks away. So, and I never thought I'd be coming back to the Woolworth, which is not the Woolworth anymore. And, and we came down here as kids to buy something that cost 5 cents or get a pinky ball or whatever that we hit up on the roof. But this was absolutely fantastic to be back in the neighborhood again. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. We love to hear things coming back full circle. And Jillian, I actually wanted to go ahead and start questions with you in terms of you being a nurse practitioner in the area at Penn Medicine. You're often the first person that people interact with and speak to when they learn about their diagnosis, not only the patients or, like, as we like to call them, the thrivers, but also the caregivers. So what do you make sure that in that first conversation people understand about their diagnosis and the journey that they have ahead of them?
That's a great question. You know, I think when patients come in, you know, it's important to know that this is overwhelming and it's scary. And a lot of times we use big words that you might not understand or know kind of what to ask, you know. So I think it really is important to fully try to understand what we say at the beginning. Make sure that you know that there are resources available. I almost always try to follow up with the patient afterwards to, you know, ask if there are any other questions and make sure that there's some understanding at the beginning, and every visit we have more discussion and more education, especially around the diagnosis and what the different terms mean, because it's very difficult. I also talk about, you know, the resources that we have in the clinic and as well as outside the clinic in the community. A lot of people come in and they really don't know. We usually ask, what do you know about myeloma, or what do you know about your diagnosis? And we kind of start from there. So that's usually a good stepping stone for us.
Thank you, Jillian. Thank you, Jillian. And I think you mentioned to me in a one-on-one conversation, and so did Rose DeMarco from the last conversation, just an emphasis on being your own advocate. And I know Lucretia said the same thing. But if any part of a conversation with a medical professional is just not clicking for you, just keep asking them, tell me what that means. Mm-hmm. What you just said, the name of a drug, like, tell me exactly what that means so that I can come out of this conversation at least with a better understanding of what I'm going through. And I think a lot of times in our families, we're taught to just kind of be respectful of people with a certain level of authority. But at the end of the day, our healthcare providers are here to serve us. So we need to feel confident in asking all the questions we need to ask. So thank you for that, Jillian. And I have a question for Lauriston and Esther. So Lauriston, you were initially diagnosed with multiple myeloma, and that diagnosis not only affects the individual, but it affects you both. So could you both share a little bit about what your initial reaction was to hearing that Lauriston had multiple myeloma?
Hi. For me, it was shocking, fearful. I tried very hard not to fall apart, but I did. You know, once I got myself together spiritually, and I'll remember that scripture that said, God would never leave you or forsake you. He doesn't give you more than you can bear. So I got myself together spiritually, and then I started asking questions. What was myeloma? Because I never heard of it before. Then when I thought about it, I said, oh, it's the big C, and for me, the big C is death. You know, most people I knew who was diagnosed with any type of cancer have died. So I was like, what do I have to do? How long do we have? You know, what stages? And of course, myeloma is not like in stages like breast cancer or something like that. It wasn't like stage 4 and fatal. But the doctor was reassuring that it was treatable, and there are a lot of drugs and studies out there that have come a long way, and he would be able to work with us. So fortunately, and thank God, we were given a team of doctors and a team of caregivers, navigators, who have really helped us through this long journey. And I find now that I'm a little more relaxed, but not thinking that it's all gone. I know it's still going on, and there are things that we need to do and still learn. But it's important to find that you have caregivers who are not panicky because they have a support team. And you know, you're not just flying by the seat of your pants. You can ask questions to your doctors, and in our case, they do answer your questions, and they put you at ease. Every time I've had questions to our doctor, Dr. Layden, he is able to make me feel comfortable. I don't leave there worrying that I didn't get the right information or that he was pulling something over on me. I always feel comfortable that my question was answered, and even if I didn't get all of it, I can go back and ask him again to clarify what he said at the time, because sometimes you don't always get it all. You hear information that might be a little shocking, but you don't always take it all in. Sometimes you have to have it repeated or hear from someone else with similar situations, and then it'll sink in and you can go from there. But yes, it's not as scary as it was for me in the beginning, but now I'm able to talk about it, to go on with my life as normal and not think that this is fatal and I'm going to have to look at end-of-life care. It's not that scary.
Thank you, Esther. And what about you, Lauriston? What was your initial reaction? What was going through your mind when you heard the diagnosis?
Well, my initial reaction on this occasion was not shocking. I was a little bit surprised, but I had multiple myeloma since 2010. So having it in 2010 and having it now, you're not going to be all that surprised. In 2010, the multiple myeloma was in remission. It didn't take a long time to get in remission. So I just forget about it after it was in remission. And that is a very big mistake. Don't ignore it. Because if you ignore it, it can come back like a vengeance to you. And that's what happened. When it came back the second time, like, I couldn't even get out of bed. I couldn't get up to walk. I couldn't get up from this chair. I had to be taken to the hospital, and that is how I was able to know the relapse was there. And I said to at that time, I said, normally you'll be, it's not surprising, but you're still thinking about death. Because around that time, a few members of the family that I know had died from the multiple myeloma. And I said, Father, you don't want me to think negative. You want me to think positive. And then I started to read about the multiple myeloma, and I realized it has improved since 2010. So I don't have to be scared. And God doesn't put anything on us, on his children, that you cannot bear. And I said, with all the changes that they have right now with multiple myeloma, I can make it just like anyone else. And I had that faith in me that he's going to give me a good doctor, a good medical team, and he did that. I was going to Einstein, and Dr. John Layton and his team worked with me. And I'm sitting here with you right now, and I don't feel a thing. You wouldn't think that I have myeloma. However, it's not over. It's still going on. But I have faith that doctors are working on it now, and sometime in the future, you will hear there's a cure for myeloma. I just have that feeling. And that's why I'm so confident that I will continue, and I'm not going to be scared anymore. I'm not saying that it wouldn't relapse. Anything is possible. But I'm not scared. And if you believe in God, all things are possible with him. All things are possible. That's the faith I have right now with myeloma. I'm not scared of it. I'll look at all of you right now and say one thing. If you have it, please keep on top of it. Do not neglect it like I did. I neglected it, and I paid the price. That wouldn't happen again. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauriston. I definitely hear the themes of faith and regular checkups, okay? You can, unbeatable if you do both. So I want to make sure that we hear a little bit from Barbara. Phil, you spoke a little bit about your kind of initial experience and your journey thus far. And Barbara, from your perspective as a caregiver, how did you navigate some of those early challenges with supporting Phil with multiple myeloma?
Hello, is this okay? Hi. It's been a long journey, and when Phil was first diagnosed, we were in our 40s. We had young children. Phil was working, I was working. I was handling a lot of things, taking the kids to, activities, and all of a sudden, everything stopped. But I learned to be flexible. I think flexibility is one of the most important things you can have, because you have to switch gears. And I learned that as a mother first. When you're a mom, things happen, and you just have to go with the flow, and you have to change with that, and you have to keep up. So I just applied that the same way. And we were fortunate that we had a wonderful community of friends and family who would step in and provide meals and help with the kids and, take over those activities. We also were very fortunate that in 1997, through the IMF, we found about 6 or 8 other people in the Philadelphia area who had multiple myeloma and were looking for a support group. So we founded a support group. We started around our kitchen table with about 8 of us, and then we have grown into, we have 369 members on our mailing list. And up until the pandemic, we were meeting in person. But since the pandemic, we've been meeting on Zoom, and we've never had so many people as we have now, and people from all over. We can get people from the UK. We can get people from all over because it's easy to just tune in. And that, I think the support group is one of the things that saved us, because we found people who were going through the same thing we were going through, and we could support each other. And we also we called ourselves a networking group because we did not sit around and cry. And the founder who named us is no longer with us. His idea was networking. We share information. We don't bury our heads in the sand. We bring up tough topics to talk about, but we talk about them and we face everything. And I think that's the key to not bury your head in the sand and not be afraid to embrace what you have. And we found, I think someone else, Paul might have said how many wonderful people he has met, and we have met such wonderful people along this journey. It's just incredible. It's our family. There's nothing like it. And I just have to say, and I also want to say that after the crisis was over, and after the surgeries, and we started the treatment and transplant, so I had a little breakdown, but I did find a therapist, and the therapist gave me wonderful advice. I'll never forget it. He said, because I am a very independent person, I'll help everybody else. I do not want people helping me. I do not. I want to help everybody. He said to me, by letting people help you, it's like giving them a gift. He said, you feel good when you help people, and they will feel good when they're helping you. And they want to do something, so let them help you. And I've taken that advice, and I give that advice now to anybody I meet. It's just what you have to do.
Love that. All right. Thank you, Barbara. And Phil, did you have anything to add about how the support group has played a role in your journey?
Yeah. A couple of things, and we use this very often, and because we are a networking group, and because, when we have guest speakers, they are amazed at how much we already know about our disease. Absolutely, we just knock them right off their feet. And I say knowledge is power, and that's a key to being to educate yourself. Of course you're not going to know as much as a doctor, but you're going to ask good questions. And even if you don't ask a good question, there is no stupid. I don't know the word stupid, but there's no bad question or a wrong question, and there's no shame in asking something you're not sure about. And I wrote down this little thing called TASK. It's kind of silly, but it's trust your doctor. If not, find a new one. Ask many questions. Seek a specialist besides your general oncologist. And here's one that I'm tough on myself, and I had to write this. Kindness. Cut yourself a break. Stress is not healthy. And back in when I was diagnosed, or the plasmacytoma became a diagnosis, I didn't listen to my body, as was stated over here, and I blame myself for it, and that was like totally ridiculous. Why put that burden on myself? That I wasn't paying attention, and it's an important thing to, again, keep on top of it.
Thank you, Phil, and thank you, Barbara.
Can I just add? I just want to add one more thing. That we're unusual because we've been on this journey for such a long time. There's not that many people living with myeloma for as long as Phil is living with. And we have another person in our support group who's 30-year survivor. So we're in kind of uncharted territory. So you have to switch gears. Phil relapsed. He was quite depressed when the relapse happened after the Revlimid stopped working. We thought, oh, a pill. Take a pill every day and I'm feeling good and I can do this. And also, we're older now. And so, like Phil said, cut yourself a break. Things get harder when you're older. We're finding that out. Never thought we would. We don't feel it, but you just have to go with the flow, keep on top of it, and cut yourself a break.
Thank you, Barbara. And I can't emphasize enough, I think, what both Phil, Barbara, and Lorison and Esther speak to around the stress. And Lorison, you mentioned you don't fear anymore, because sometimes that fear is a form of stress, and it can eat away at you and make it even harder to navigate what you're going through. I know with my mom, her stroke happened at the age of 42, which is very young for a stroke, and she was exercising, drinking all the water, and the only thing they could think of that maybe contributed to her stroke is stress. So however you kind of are able to navigate that stress by talking to a therapist, as Barbara mentioned, to a support group, leaning into your faith, all of those ways are definitely things that we want to make sure we lean into while we navigate these difficult situations. So I want to turn it back to Jillian. As you've been talking to so many different folks about their multiple myeloma journeys, you've probably given a lot of gems to folks about things that they need to make sure they take away. So if you could summarize those into 2 key takeaways that we should keep in mind for folks who are navigating multiple myeloma or supporting someone with multiple myeloma, what would you say are those 2 key takeaways?
That's a great question, and it is definitely hard to put just 2 key takeaways. I think the first thing I would say is, each person's individual. So as you've heard throughout the day, everyone's journey and finding out they have myeloma to begin with is individual. Whether it's just from routine blood work or from something going on in the bone marrow or the bone. So each patient journey is going to be individualized as well, but it is going to be a journey, and it's definitely a roller coaster where we're going to be a partner with you throughout your treatment and your care. The other thing I would say is just be able to ask questions and feel comfortable with your providers and your care team. It is going to be a long process, so we want to make sure that you feel comfortable with us so that you can ask questions, and when we talk about different treatment options, that you're able to have a conversation with us and be a self-advocate and have family or friends with you to also ask and listen to the answers.
Thank you, Jillian. Again, ask those questions, and if you know you're going to go into the office and not feel comfortable because you have a history of, like, I just don't like to ask questions, I don't like dealing with whoever, then bring someone with you who is going to be willing to do that on your behalf. So thank you, Jillian. And then turning it to Lorison and Phil this time, both as thrivers, or as some would say survivors, what would you say is the most helpful thing that you've had on your side throughout your experience? And then what is one thing that you wish that you had? Let's start with Lorison.
The most helpful thing I had with me was the care team from Einstein Hospital, headed by Dr. John Layton. Like, I felt very comfortable going into him. When I see him, I can ask anything, and if he doesn't have the answer for me, he will get back to me either via the portal, the hospital portal, or he will call me later. And I'm the type of person that, although it's a doctor, I do ask questions. And I'm the kind of person, if I answer a question and I don't feel comfortable, I'll ask it again. And I'll tell him, I don't feel comfortable with this. I'm not going to take this route. He's the doctor, I'm not the doctor, but it's my life. And I prefer to tell a doctor, listen, I'm not going to take that route. Let me take another route. Is there another route? Don't forget to always answer those questions. They're going to tell you one thing, but that one thing may not save you. There are other things out there that will save you. And just tell him, I think about it, but I don't feel comfortable. Let me find out another route, or you tell me another route. And if they can't find that route for you, try somewhere else. As simple as that. Don't think that because it's a doctor and you're doing well, that you cannot change a doctor. If you don't feel comfortable, get a second opinion. So far, everything has been running smooth. And I would like it to keep that way. Because as I'm talking here to you now, I feel very comfortable. And I want to keep this way until the day comes when they say, we have a cure for myeloma, and I'll be the first in the line. You know, no one is going to get there before me. I'll tell you, the last bout with myeloma, I'm going off kilter here, but when I got out of the hospital, I was in a wheelchair. I couldn't walk. Then after I moved from a wheelchair, I used a walker to help me get to mobility. After the walker, I had a cane, and I was using a cane. And now, so, anyway, I will let you get back on the topic. So, okay, Phil, you can take over.
We got to see you strut too, Phil.
Boy, tough act to follow. Really. I found a couple of weird things. You know, I found a support group, and then I looked back and for a moment and I said, well, why do I want to go to a support group and feel sad? I mean, you know, I didn't know anything about support groups. You know, I didn't know what they could become, and ours became a networking group, and I find myself very comfortable, maybe the most comfortable, speaking to fellow patients and what they've gone through. And you know, people look at me and say, "Phil, you're a hero," and I look over here, and you're a hero. You're my hero. You're my hero. You know, it's just incredible. The people at Penn are, gosh, I've known them for so long. I feel like, you know, they're family. You know, I watched Dr. Stabmauer's child go from kindergarten to postgraduate studies. I mean, it's just absolutely unbelievable. You know, and you're right about, you know, as I mentioned, you mentioned if you're not comfortable with a doctor. There was a person early on in our support group who went to a doctor, and you know, I think she had a broken shoulder, and she complained to him a bit, and he said, "You're going to die," and she said to him, "Well, so are you." All right, so you know, don't give me any crap. You know, was I naive enough, you know, when I was 47 to think that I could, you know, beat the 2 to 5 year odds? But I didn't think about that. That's something I just didn't think about. I had a family and a dear wife that absolutely got me out of trouble.
thank you both. And I know that for both of you, your care teams were a big factor. But leading into our last question, I'm sure that the number one most valuable resource was probably your partners and your caregivers. So last question would be for both Barbara as well as Esther. Caregiving is a 24-hour job, right? Even when you get a break, maybe have someone to relieve you, you're always probably thinking about the person that you're taking care of and wanting to make sure that they're well. So it's so important to make sure that you're also carving out time to fill your own cups. And I know, Barbara, you mentioned a therapist was something that was helpful for you, but could you both speak a little bit to how you take care of yourselves as caregivers? And Barbara, maybe you can kick us off.
Hello. I've been developing a lot of different things that help me get through. The therapist helped. I'm an artistic person, and I do lots of different crafts. I always have my entire life. And I turn to my art a lot of times as therapy because it takes me out of my head and into another realm. And I like to take walks, and I listen to podcasts, and I like to learn things. I don't listen to podcasts that are just people laughing and joking. I listen to podcasts I can learn from, and there's always more to learn, and it's just so invigorating for me. Also, the support group has been a wonder, and I have relied on a lot of people from the support group to lean on and to talk to when I'm not having a good day. Now our kids are grown, and they have become a big support too, because they're calling and they're worried and they're concerned, and we don't want to worry them, but it's nice to have their support too. That's basically how I do it.
Thank you, Barbara. And what about you, Esther? How do you take care of yourself?
I lean mostly on my spiritual friends and sister, who's a pastor, and I find that helps me up in the morning. I'm on a prayer group first thing in the morning. Sometimes at 6 o'clock, I get up early, and I tune into the spiritual, the prayer group, and they're intercessors. When they're done, you feel good. You feel you can do anything after that. But I also find that your health is important too. You have to take care of yourself, watch what you're eating, make sure you're keeping up with your own appointments, having your annual visits. Because you may not have the myeloma, but something else could be creeping up that you're ignoring because you're spending so much time taking care of someone else. But I find that I gained some strength because I was smaller in stature. I've gained some weight recently, but I would lift a wheelchair up, put it in the back of a car, take it out, put it together, get him to the appointments, get him to the doctor. And I don't remember how I did that, but I got it done. And so it's important to take care of yourself, your health, what you eat, make sure you stay hydrated, drink your water, and whatever you do to stay hydrated. And also, for me, I use that affirmation that life is like a bicycle. How do you stay balanced is to keep moving, keep it moving.
That's a great one. That's a great one. And with that, would love to give the audience a chance to ask any questions y'all might have for our panelists. Yes, Dr. Clemens.
It's not a question, but a statement. And part of my responsibility is to run workshops, and one of the workshops that we run is called the advocacy. And I just wanted to add to what everyone said on the panel in reference to advocacy. And one of the things we encourage people to do that are going through this journey is to keep a journal, and to journal when you're not in front of the doctor, like write down all of your questions, because you always forget when you're in front of the doctor because you're nervous or anxious or you feel rushed, and so you want to keep a journal. With that journal, you want to make sure that you get all of your questions answered, and when you're getting your questions answered, if you're not comfortable, if somebody's talking to you and you don't feel comfortable or you feel confused, stop and ask your provider, slow down, can you explain this to me because I don't understand? The other thing is bringing someone else with you. I think Gwen said that, bringing an advocate with you who can help you remember the symptoms that you had before you went to the doctor and you may have forgotten. And then ask, okay, what's the risk? What else do I need to do? Is there something that I'm not looking for? So those are the things that we talk about in our advocacy workshops. So I wanted to add to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Clemens. Anyone else got a question? Give it 10 seconds. Y'all just covered it so well. Okay, I think some big themes here was just not to do it alone, and that when this diagnosis comes, your name might be the only one on the chart, but the journey is one that you will have people beside you to walk with. You'll have God to walk with you. You have your community, folks at West Oak Lane and broader Philadelphia. You have advocacy organizations like the MMRF, and you have broader communities like Now Included to support you. So no matter what you're going through, just remember that there are people, there are forces that are by your side, and you're not carrying that load by yourself. So let's give it up to our panelists. And before we transition to lunch, we're going to have a quick survey break. Okay, so I know at the beginning, everyone who came into the room picked up a little white form, and that's because we want to make sure that when we show up here that we understand if we did a good job. And if we didn't, that's okay. You just let us know on that form. It won't hurt our feelings. You still get lunch, but it really helps us to make sure that the next time we come out, we maybe tweak a thing or two. So all we ask is that there's no right or wrong answers. Just answer honestly. If you're coming in and you're still not sure what multiple myeloma is, you can put that down. If you're very confident, put that down. But this survey is very important to us to just make sure that we can improve and continuously show up better. So we'll just play some music and give you all about 10 minutes to fill out that form. Similar to breakfast, that is going to be your lunch ticket as well before we close out, okay? So thank you all so much for your feedback. All right, everyone. Hopefully everyone's gotten a chance to fill out those very important forms. Please feel free to continue to take some time to fill those out if you are not complete. But we had just a full, wonderful day of insights, thoughts, and stories. So we hope that you leave today knowing that you have a little bit more information about this condition that disproportionately impacts your community, our community. Everybody with me? Just hear a little bit of background noise. We're almost there towards the end. So thank you all again, because you could have been anywhere else, but you chose to spend the day with us. And I want to make sure that Alla gets a chance to just share what the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation wants to make sure that we're taking away as we leave the summit.
Well, again, thank you all so much for coming. We know that, you could have, like Gwen said, been anywhere else, but you're here, and we appreciate you spending your day with us. And hopefully you're walking away with a better understanding of what is multiple myeloma, an understanding of what are the resources that are available for myeloma patients. But what we're really hoping is that no matter what you've heard today, the information that you've received, you can really spread it across any disease, any condition. So that message of empowerment, that message of hope, just knowing and hearing from all of our panelists and our patient thrivers and our, patient warriors that this is not the end of the line. We've seen folks strut. We almost heard Lucretia sing. I wish you had. Well, we're still going to pin her down for that one. But, just watching how, they exude that hope and knowing that, hey, this is not the end of the line. There's so much more ahead. So one thing I do encourage you all is to continue to use your resources. We've got local resources. Hopefully you've been downstairs. We've got the Lazarex Cancer Foundation. We've got the Philadelphia Multiple Myeloma Networking Group. We've got Fox Chase. And then also groups like the MMRF, the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation. We've got our patient nurse navigators. We have a myeloma mentors program. So, it's one thing to hear from, healthcare providers, but it's another thing to talk to patients who are in the same boat, have been through the same journey as you. So, reach out to us. You'll continue to get, communication from us, but we encourage you to come out to all of our other events. We've got the Philadelphia Run Walk that's coming up. Hopefully you've had a chance to sign up downstairs. Hey, set up a group. We could do the West Oak Lane, group at the Run Walk that's coming up. So
thank you again. We appreciate you. We hope to be back in some capacity, and you know, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ala. And from the Now Included side of things, we want to make sure we emphasize that this work, again, we cannot do it alone, and that it does not end here or today. We want to make sure we continue these conversations with our family members, with our church groups, with our communities, and Now Included is a space for us to be able to do that. I think the emphasis is that we cannot get this all done in one day either. It's not that we leave this session and the next day there's a cure for multiple myeloma either. This work in terms of making sure that our communities are represented in the healthcare space has been going on for a long time. And there's actually who we call the godmother of our organization, who I think can speak to how this work has been ongoing and is going to continue to go, and her name is Miss Jonice Thompson, and I would love for her to share a couple words about the importance of us continuing to come together and continuing to show up full force within the health space. If you could give it up for Miss Jonice. And someone lost their phone.
Hello, West Oak Lane and visitors. Somebody left their phone. The initials on the back is JR. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Wynn. I just want to say good evening, and what a delight it is. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, and I came all the way here, and I'm going to tell you why I did it, because relationships are important. When I called this center, I knew nobody here, not one person, but I want to tell you the value of building quick relationships with people. Your center director, you're only going to be as good as your leader. And I tell you, the relationship that I have built with Miss Brown is probably going to last forever. So I want to give all kudos to your center director for being open enough to respond to somebody all the way from Birmingham, Alabama. And I do what I do because I retired, and I see somebody from Birmingham back there. All right. All right, get my number and call me, okay? That's right. Make sure you get my number. All right, call me. But I just want to thank you so very much for being so open. You all, the only way we're going to heal our communities is that we must get involved. And we must tell our stories. And that's why Acclinate Now Included, that's why we travel all over the United States, making sure that we bring information to communities like this one. But now, it's not good enough for you to get all of this information, because everybody didn't get the email. Everybody didn't get the text message. So what's expected of you is that now you got it, share it with somebody. Share it with somebody. So I want to say thank you all, and it was my pleasure being here today. And so just go tell somebody else so that we can help save lives, because future generations are counting on us to find answers. So thank you so much. And our boss, Tiffany, where's Tiffany? That's over Now Included. She started this initiative. And so I want to make sure that she come and give a few welcoming words. The company owner. And she got her baby with her here too, and her hubby. You can tell.
The whole family's here. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Tiffany Whitlow. I have the pleasure of serving as our co-founder and chief development officer, and this work would not be done without each and every one of you. I want you to know that those insights that you're sharing on those surveys are going to be shared back with our partners, and you're helping to make sustainable change within industry. When we started our company, what we knew is that drugs were being created that were truly not as effective as possible for the majority of the population. There are drugs like albuterol that is 47% less effective in African Americans, and that's a problem. I believe that it started with pure education, awareness, and equal access, and that is what we're here to accomplish. So thank you so much. Thank you to my team. Thank you to MMRF for believing in us and trusting us to carry out this mission for you all. Thank you, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tiffany. And we have a special thank you to West Oak Lane staff, including Frank and Norman, who stayed late, came early with us to make sure that this space was set up. So thank you both, as well as Reverend Shaw, Tyrone, and Deb, and anyone who had a hand in helping us be set up. And then I mentioned like the pretty pictures and the videos and making sure this lives on, but that could not have been done without our production team, the AVO crew. So let's give it up for all of the people who had a hand in making today a success. I know buses are coming soon, so lunch is starting, but thank you all again, and we hope to see you soon.